Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a summer toolkit episode. Over the summer, like I said, I'm going to be bringing you these little moments and snippets from different versions of the podcast and workshops that I've been putting out over the past year or so. And this is from the subscription version of the podcast, which was called the Toolkit. And they were my different workshops and other resources which I wanted to bring to you on the podcast platform because of the brilliant guidance. So today is no different. And I have Cara Wheatley-McGrain. Now, Cara is an author and she's also an IBS specialist whose journey with IBS and IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, has led her to become an advocate for mindful eating and gut health, something that so many of us suffer with as part of our ADHD gut health. I talk about it all the time, that often IBS and all sorts of sort of digestive issues come hand in hand often with our neurodivergence. So she's going to teach us a little bit more about how the gut microbiome influences all of our health, especially how it's affecting our mood, our focus and our stress levels. And she's also going to tell us a little bit about this study from University College of Cork showing that eating more fibre and fermented foods can help reduce our stress levels. And we know that serotonin, which is our sort of feel-good hormone, is mostly based in our gut. And so it's so important that what we put in our body really does impact our mood, our sleep, our focus, our attention. And she's going to help us understand how we can make these small, very practical changes to our diet and our lifestyle to improve our gut health. I love this conversation with Cara. I'm glad it's here on the podcast for you, and take from it what you can, because all of us just need these small incremental changes to help us in our daily life. So here it is.
And one of the things that I think it's really important to know, if you're on this call and you have a gut concern, and maybe you're living with IBS or symptoms, maybe you haven't got a diagnosis. And I know it's very, very common for people with ADHD to have a gut disorder, something that isn't quite right with their gut, is we know that nutrition plays a huge part in the gut-brain connection. So I think the simple, powerful message is that what we eat shapes how we feel, that what we eat can support our brain health. What we eat can also support our gut health. And I think when we really let that sit with us, that's a very powerful, it's a very simple message. And I think most of us probably know that, but we still make decisions maybe each day that don't necessarily support our best gut health or our best brain health. And actually, that's really understandable. And one of the reasons it's really understandable is there is a multi-billion-dollar industry which is designing very, very, very tasty foods, which are really not very good for either our gut health or our brain health. And I think it's just being really honest about that. It's a huge, huge industry which makes irresistible, gorgeous foods that really we desire, that we are designed to want to eat. So I also said that we talk a little bit about the gut microbiome. This is a place that I'm really passionate to talk about. I don't know if any of you in the room have heard about the gut microbiome. Anyone who's listening at the moment? Kate, you're nodding. It's kind of been in the press a lot at the moment. There's a real kind of a huge amount of research. And I want to talk about one of the reasons for that is because we now know that our gut microbiome is also linked to our immune system and our immune health. But also there's some amazing research going on. I'm going to mention another key place of study at the moment is the University College Cork in Ireland. And they are doing some work specifically around stress and anxiety and the gut microbiome. And they have researched and released some papers this year about reductions in stress linked to the health of the microbiome. And in particular, one of the simple takeaways is they're looking at people increasing their fibre intake and the intake of fermented food as having a positive intake on reducing stress. And the wonderful thing about this is the studies they did, which were quite large scale studies on human beings, because there's been a lot of mice studies and a lot of studies on animals, but they've started to do more research on human beings, is in as little as a month, 6 weeks, 2 months, they've actually noticing differences in reported levels of stress with people who are increasing those levels of fibre and fermented foods. And I'll talk a little bit more about fibre and fermented food actually generally in terms of diet. Um,
Could I just ask a question?
yeah.
Something that correlates to, I don't know if it's gut health, but I know that a lot of people with ADHD, if they get their bloods done, they notice that they are low in ferritin, iron. And I just wondered, is that anything to do with our gut and how we absorb iron? And is there anything specific gut wise that we can be increasing our iron? Because there has been quite a lot of evidence now in studies that we are more prone to low iron. And I know that has an impact on our mood and sleep and everything. So I just wondered if that correlates at all to what you do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that, so that's a really interesting share. It could be, so there could be a few different reasons for that. It could be to do with patterns of diet. So it could be people with ADHD less likely to have higher sources of iron in their diet, don't know. Could also be to do with sometimes if we have low level inflammation in some parts of the gut, it can affect our ability to absorb specific nutrients. Now, I'm very aware of that because I live with IBD, although it's incredibly well managed. I do take some supplements of vitamin B because that is one of the patterns of malabsorption that can happen with people with IBD. So it may be interesting about looking generally at reducing any inflammation. I don't know the specific evidence of people with ADHD having greater patterns of inflammation, but inflammation is correlated with higher levels of depression. So do we have a pattern of, again, patterns of maybe increased coffee or caffeine intake, which could be impacting on. So it's interesting, isn't it? What is the actual causal part? What's going on in terms of dietary intake or food intake? That sounds like it could be a study. That could be something where you have a control group who reduce caffeine intake and then look and see what the impact is on ADHD symptoms or iron levels. Thank you.
There's a lot of people that self-medicate using caffeine if they and it's been known, like a lot of doctors recommend it if you don't want to go down the amphetamine route or the stimulant route, is that we can, I'm one of those people that I know that I drink a certain amount of coffee in the morning and that kind of propels me. And it's all finely tuned and formulated, but I also have very low iron, so I'm always having to manage that. And I'm just making that connection that it's probably because I drink quite a bit of caffeine. Not a huge amount, I have to say, but I'm very sensitive to caffeine. So maybe my body's just, and then there is definitely inflammation there because obviously if I've had IBS and all things like that. So it's just interesting to be able to piece the puzzle together a little bit more.
Yeah. One of the big things that I'm a huge advocate for is for us to start to absolutely be aware of the scientific information, but also because we are also unique. And Kate, you were just talking about being very sensitive to caffeine. I'm also incredibly sensitive to caffeine. And this is about how physiology, we can have the same thing as our best friend and we can have a really different response in our body than they do. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things I'm a huge advocate for at the Mindful Gut here is becoming more aware, really becoming more aware. And one of the things that's can be a big support if you have got gut health concern, if you get bloating, if you have IBS symptoms, is to keep a food diary. But it's also a great opportunity to reflect and go, oh, how did that sit with my gut? How did I digest that? How did it feel? Noticing your immediate response, but maybe a few hours later. Because these are really powerful tools that are helping us to tune into our intuition, tune into our gut and go, actually, how did that sit with me? And sometimes we can inadvertently kind of get into patterns where we're just kind of eating the same thing, doing the same thing. And it kind of causes a cycle of just feeling unwell, feeling kind of like, frazzled or, and it's kind of, well, what was going on? And obviously there can be external things happening, but it's also useful to kind of go, well, what did I eat? What was I drinking? How is that related? And that gives massive amount of personalized knowledge and power, because then you can actually do a little tweak and a little test and go, well, if I didn't do that for a week, how might I feel? How am I now feeling?
Hello, just me interrupting today's podcast because I just wanted to let you know that, first of all, thank you so much for all your support and all your amazing, lovely messages, reviews, testimonials about the book. I'm getting pictures and messages every day telling me you've taken it on holiday, you've shared it, or someone's seen you reading it and they've asked you about it. And this is why I love everything about the book, because this is helping everybody on the ground help themselves, empower themselves with better awareness and knowledge and guidance and understanding, not just from myself, but from some of the amazing experts who are in the book. However, I want to explain to you how we're going to take the book to the next level. So I will be launching the beginning of October a brand new space, community, membership. It's going to be called More Yourself. It's going to be based on truth, authenticity, leaning into who we really want to be now that we have this better awareness, better understanding. So you can put yourself down on the wait list and you will get the founding members price, and then it'll go up from October. And I'm going to be bringing you lots of different things in the month. Now, it's really going to be based on community. It's going to be based on women lifting and supporting each other up. It's going to be me coming in, doing some Q&As, some workshops. I'm going to be bringing in guests, but most importantly, I'm going to be bringing the book to life. So if you love a book club style conversation, there's going to be that opportunity as well throughout the year, where we're going to be focusing on the different chapters, exercises, prompts, nudges, whatever that is, so we can really get the most out of it. But we're also going to be focusing on connection, finding your people. And I'm really excited about this option is bringing in some mentoring, because I can't do it all and I don't know it all either. So the opportunity to offer yourself as a mentor, but also be a mentee as well, and guide. We need more women guiding each other. We need our wisdom filtering through. And so I really realise the power in each of us helping each other. I'm going to put all the details in the show notes. Put your name down if it feels right to you, if you feel aligned, if it feels like something you're looking for, something accessible, low cost, and I hope super, super helpful. Now back to today's podcast, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community.
I've got a daughter who is massively impacted by what she eats. And so I try now to explain to her, I was like, you had that meltdown, that tantrum, whatever it was. Did you notice that you'd eaten those fizzy sweets half an hour before? And so now I say to you, if you're going to have those fizzy sweets, I need you to know that I can't be around you because I can't deal with the impact of them afterwards. Or if you have that Diet Coke. So I'm trying to explain to her that for her to have like that empowerment, that she understands that there's going to be a direct connection between her mood, or she gets really, she's like me, she's so sensitive with what goes in her body that it impacts her sort of straight away. And I had exactly the same. If I've eaten badly that day, without a doubt, that evening, I'm going to be much moodier, more irritable, easily frustrated. It's that direct, the impact. But if you haven't got that self-awareness and you're not understanding that it's the food, that's quite a difficult place to be. So yeah, it's just so interesting that there is, like, we notice it from an individual perspective, but for you as an expert to say, we know there's a direct connection between mood and food. I love it.
And I think that's it's such an important thing for us to sit with. And there's a couple of things, Kate, I'd love to pick up about what you just said is, one, artificial sweeteners, there's a lot of evidence that they have a particularly dangerous effect on the gut microbiome. So they're a very specific species of gut bacteria. And I've got to say, we have trillions of gut bacteria. We have thousands of different species. And the work that's happening at the moment is to try to understand a little bit about what these bacteria's roles are. We have beneficial bacteria and we have bacteria which we know are much less helpful or can be unhealthy for us. And what we want is we want a balance in our gut microbiome. So we want to have as many of those beneficial, positive bacteria as possible. And I also think just maybe making an explicit point as well that our gut bacteria play a key role in synthesizing serotonin and dopamine. And I know we were having a conversation about dopamine deficiency in ADHD. And therefore having a healthy gut microbiome and supporting our gut microbiome to flourish and thrive is really important. And when I just go back to the point about artificial sweeteners, a lot of our modern day ways of eating, like artificial sweeteners, preservatives that may be put into food to give them a long shelf life, emulsifiers which change make something maybe soft at, like margarine products which are kind of soft, soft at room temperature and when they're cold. some of these products, there's increasing evidence they have a very negative impact on the health of the gut microbiome and may even cause certain of the gut microbiome species to die out. Now, that's important because we want to have a healthy, flourishing, diverse range of bacteria that live in our gut. And one of the things that I'm a big advocate is that we have a responsibility to protect them, to take care of our gut bacteria. But, no one's going to do it for us. They live in us. They're our inner ecosystem. So going back to the point you were making about your daughter and the fizzy sweets or the Diet Coke or whatever it might be, she may be particularly sensitive to that, and it may be having a particular impact on the health of her gut microbiome. So this is about us starting to kind of connect the dots, in our own health. But I think it's really valuable for us to know it for ourselves, for our loved ones, because then we can make some decisions about the products that we buy and, decisions that we make. And I'm not saying that's always easy, because some of these foods are designed to be basically quite addictive,
and convenient. They're working to a society that, like you said before, is like we're rushing, we're never quite present, we're always like trying to find quick answers to everything. And if you're telling, they're putting stuff in like the margarine, so it's room, so we can spread faster, so we can get out the door quicker. And it's the same with everything, like every bit of food. It's like, how do we know? And I wonder if the connection between the rising huge amount of mental health issues, yes, we've got social media, we've got all sorts of things, less activity, but I wonder if it's the convenience of all the food and adding all these things to it unknowingly that we are changing the gut microbiome, and we are almost like evolving the species into a less mentally well world. And that's really scary, because so much of it is out of our control. And then we add the complexity of ADHD, where many of us, unfortunately, are needing convenient food, or we'll forget we've not got dinner in, and we'll rush out and buy ready-made pasta or a ready-made meal, or maybe our executive functioning to be able to cook from scratch is compromised, and it's much harder for us. And you kind of feel like we're paying that. There's a term coined as like the ADHD tax, because we buy things that are sort of ready-made and done quickly because that just helps us. But so many of it's almost like a contradiction, because so many of us need to be eating from scratch, and we need that full, the organic, unprocessed way of life. And for us, it can be quite hard to achieve. So I'm wondering, with that lens on, what can we do to help our gut in a way that feels accessible and not overwhelming, while almost kind of like recognizing the fact that there were all the big companies are chucking in all sorts of things that are wanting to kind of debilitate our gut? Yeah. Feels like a big loaded question, but is there anything that you can suggest?
Yeah, I think, Kate, I want to just really honour what you've said, because I think actually we have so many pressures on our lives, and then to kind of put an additional pressure of guilt, I've got to go and do this gourmet, extravagant, amazing meals every day from scratch, because our lives have evolved. And I know there's a really interesting statistic here in the UK that in 1980, it was just shy of 2/3 of cooking was from scratch cooking. So all, from scratch ingredients, and about 26%, so just about a quarter, was highly processed foods. And by 2020, 40 years, so, that's my lifetime, it's flipped completely. So if we just pan out a little bit for a moment before I go into that, maybe practical things, I just think we just need to take a big lens, because I think the other thing is we've kind of normalized what's really quite unusual ways of eating. And I think here in the UK and the USA, we're probably at the most unusual, probably even compared to Europe or some other global countries. We are eating a very kind of classical, sad, standard American diet. Often in this country is kind of ultra processed fast food, quite high proportions of junk food. And interestingly, young people are eating some of the highest proportions of that food. And one thing is our brains are very nutrient hungry, as well as our gut microbiomes wanting lots of fibre. So I would say our brains are nutrient hungry. They take a lot of the nutrients of what we eat. And our guts are very fibre greedy. They want to eat fibre. That's what they really love. And in a standard kind of Western diet, we're not getting either of those things. And then the other thing I would just say is our gut microbiome, so the species of bacteria that live in our gut, are millions of years old. They have evolved with us. They've co-evolved with us over the evolution of human beings. And they are facing food they've never faced before. Let's just put it like, if we just like look at it they have, evolved. Our hunter-gatherer tribes, they weren't eating the kind of foods that we're eating. So they're kind of seeing this food and they're kind of like, actually, how do we break this down? How do we digest this? How do we make this work? And if we look at it from that way, it's kind of like, oh yeah, so our diets have evolved really rapidly in the last few decades, but actually our gut bacteria are ancient. So we have a disconnect. So some of the simple things we can do is to try and look at reducing some of that ultra processed food, becoming a little bit more mindful of it. I would also say try and avoid the diet products because they're going to have the artificial sweeteners and they are really not healthy for the gut microbiome at all. So actually you'd rather go for the products which have got the real ingredients rather than lots of those synthetic, chemical, artificial products inside them. So that's, again, if you're making a judgment call. I sometimes like look at stuff and I just have a quick glance at the back. If I'm moving around a supermarket and I go, if I don't understand what it is, it's probably not good for my gut. It's probably not good for my brain health. So I just have a quick look and, trying to then make a decision. If it's got complex, you need a PhD in chemistry, I try to put it back. And so not all processed foods are equal. You can have some things which are relatively healthy and you can see they are primarily real foods and real ingredients. I'll also make decisions about things that have a really long shelf life. And I would just say, I went gluten-free 20 years ago when it was actually quite difficult. But I'm a little bit wary about some of the free-from products because they are, sometimes you look at shelf life and you think, what is in that? What is in it that's going to sit on the shelf for 2 years? If it's a tin, that's fine. But if it's another soft product, you're kind of like, what is that? That's a preservative. And how is my gut bacteria going to manage that? So some of those are kind of some things about reducing. So what we're looking at is vegetables, the legume family. I sometimes just get a tin of beans, of pulses, of chickpeas, or something. I put it in, whatever I'm making, I put it in, I add it in. So it's a wonderful way of adding in a wonderful source of fibre. And it's, again, increasing the diversity of what you're eating. Fruit is good, but probably vegetables are kind of like the queen of gut health, really. And I would probably put pulses, but fruit has a role. It's easy to grab an apple. It's a wonderful prebiotic. Again, the fibre in the skin, wonderful for your gut. Bananas are another wonderful prebiotic. And I'm aware that I'm using a term prebiotic. So prebiotics are foods that feed our gut bacteria. So they're sources of fibre for our gut bacteria. So apples, bananas, oats are some of my absolute go-tos. If you think about breakfast at this time of year, it's really easy to have a high prebiotic, high fibre breakfast. So your porridge oats, apple, banana in them, wonderful source of really good food that has that slow release energy. And I soak my oats the night before, so they're easy to cook quickly on the hob. I go for whole oats. I don't go for kind of ready prepared, meals. I go for the whole oats. But I soak, I add some chia seeds. I'll put a bit of plant milk in. I'll chop a banana on top. I'll chuck some walnuts on top, some pumpkin seeds. And in that is amazing. It's absolutely starting my day with a real kind of boost of protein, fibre, and a wonderful source of prebiotics. Probiotics, which you probably have heard of because sometimes you get them in little drinks or you can take tablets of probiotics. So probiotics are basically live bacteria, and you can obviously live bacteria coming in and out of your body all the time. Every time you eat, every time you go to the toilet, you're losing bacteria. So what you want to do is be replacing them and kind of nourishing those bacteria. And probiotics are the big thing. When I talked about the University of Cork study that came out this year about reductions in stress, they were looking at fermented foods. So fermented foods are things like fermented live yogurt. So if you're going to get yogurt, try and go for the no sugar live yogurt. So it's actually got live bacteria in. Things like kefir, so that's fermented milk products. You can get non-dairy forms as well. It doesn't have to be cow's milk. It can be, there's some lovely coconut live yogurts around and coconut kefir as well. And then you can make fermented foods like sauerkraut or kimchi, or buy them in jars. They tend to be quite expensive, I'll just be honest. They tend to be quite costly. They're kind of on trend, but it's also easy to make some as well. And they tend to last in the fridge for quite a few weeks as well. So we talked about probiotics, and we talked about prebiotics, and we talked about fibre. And that combination is really gifting your gut, and it's gifting your gut the ability to flourish and do well, and supporting your gut health. And we now know, going back to the term probiotics, the University of Cork have coined a term called psychobiotics. So psychobiotics is the movement towards treating neurological and psychiatric disorders and mental health disorders with different forms of probiotic. So this is how powerful our probiotics are.
If this episode has been helpful for you and you're looking for more tools and more guidance, my brand new book, The ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit, is out now. You can find it wherever you buy your books from. You can also check out the audiobook if you do prefer to listen to me. I have narrated it all myself. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you for the next episode.